I'll be doing my monthly reading log for December. I read 82 volumes from 18 different series. And as usual, I'm gonna go through and talk about each series. There will be timestamps, so if I'm talking about a series that you're not interested in, you can feel free to skip to a different section. And after going through my December reads, I'll share some of the series I'm planning to read in January. And before I get started, just a reminder that I will have links in the video description to my anime list where I track all the manga I read and anime I watch, and also a link to my Instagram where I share my monthly TBR, my current reads, and my thoughts as I'm reading them. So here are my reads for December. Haru's Curse. This is a 2-volume series that was released in English as a 2-in-1 omnibus volume. And it's a josei drama romance series about a young woman who starts dating her late sister's fiance. I really like the way this story depicts how characters deal with grief, depression, and feelings of guilt. There are flashbacks to earlier events throughout. The two main characters grew up with very different but also very similar family dynamics, so we see how they each deal with their family problems. I really like this series. This one was a reread for me because I was buddy reading it with Dragon Ball Zoe, and I really enjoyed seeing her reactions as we read. But this is one I'd recommend if you're looking for a shorter series with a romance between adults. Our Happy Hours. This is a drama seinen one-shot adapted from a Korean light novel that came highly recommended from a friend. It's only 8 chapters, but I cried so much. I knew it was going to be a really heavy and emotional read, but it hit me really hard, especially the ending. It follows 2 individuals with very bleak outlooks on life. One is a former pianist and the other a convicted murderer on death row. They come from completely different social standings, but both have experienced some really terrible things. And we see after their initial encounter how their differences, but then similar experiences, start to have an impact on their outlooks. The art style is really unique. I really like the way the characters' faces are drawn, and throughout the story you can really see their emotions from the subtle changes in their facial expressions. It is a really impactful read, and I'd recommend it if you're okay with some triggering content, and I'll make sure to put the content warnings on the screen, so make sure to be aware of all this before getting into this one. In the Clear Moonlit Dusk, I read Volume 1. This had been a digital-only release, so I was really happy when I found out it would be getting a physical release. This is an ongoing shoujo romance series set in high school. It follows these 2 who are both nicknamed the Prince, but each for different reasons. So this girl is a very sweet and kind girl who is tall and skinny and has masculine features, so she's often mistaken as a handsome boy. She doesn't purposefully act chivalrous, but the girls around her are always swooning when she holds doors open and just does other princely things. And she seems very confident, but isn't used to getting attention from boys, so we see a really shy and gentle side from her when this boy starts to take an interest in her. I really like this mangaka, Mikuyama Mori. She writes really likable characters and good humor in her series, and I always really like her character designs. 2 of her other series, Daytime Shooting Star and Tsubakicho Lonely Planet, have age gap romances, so if you avoided her works for that reason, this series would be a good one to give a try. The next couple volumes come out in January, March, and May, so I'm looking forward to getting deeper into this story. I Will Be Waiting in 1999. This is a drama coming-of-age manhwa that follows two very sweet boys from childhood into their late teenage years. They meet at an orphanage and really become like brothers, even after getting adopted into different families. The story is really sad because the two boys have very different tragic reasons they became orphans, and throughout the story, there is bullying, domestic violence, assault. There are a handful of really terrible adults, but also some really kind and compassionate adults. Even though there's kind of a melancholy feel to the story, there are also some really heartwarming friendships and found family moments. I really like the art style. It's really soft and uses a really calming color palette. And I definitely recommend this if you want to read something that will really pull on your heartstrings. Perfect World. I read volumes 1 to 12. This is a drama romance josei series. And this was a reread I did as a buddy read with some friends. I really like this series. It's in my top 10 favorite manga. It follows these two who were friends in high school who re-encounter in their late 20s. And she finds out that while he followed his dreams to become an architect, since high school, he was in an accident that left him with a spinal cord injury, and now he's wheelchair bound. I really love that through the series, we meet quite a few different couples that have one able-bodied partner and one in a wheelchair, and each couple approaches challenges differently and have different outcomes. During portions of the story, there are some irritating love rivals and frustrating parental opposition and just discrimination in general, but I really love the storytelling. I really appreciate the research that the mangaka put into her work to make the situations realistic. And this series really makes me think about things I normally wouldn't think about with the disability representation. And I also love how much the series talks about barrier-free design in homes and businesses. But I'd recommend this one to anyone who's looking for a dramatic romance between adults with a good look into the daily challenges that come with disabilities. And I do want to add that while there are ups and downs throughout the story, the ending is so good. And the last 2 volumes are such a satisfying conclusion to the story. And I didn't show all of the final cover because it has a spoiler on it. Veil. I read volumes 1 to 3. This is a historical romance slice of life series that follows a police officer and a blind woman. They bump into each other by chance, and then we see their daily interactions following that first encounter. After a while, it doesn't necessarily say they're in a relationship, and it kind of jumps around between chapters, so it was hard to keep track of how much time was passing. One synopsis I read said it represents small moments of life between the two of them, so the kind of abruptness is intentional, and each chapter is pretty short, so it felt like a super fast read just for 3 volumes. The art style was a little different, so it took a few chapters to get used to, but by the end, it had really grown on me. And both the art style and their conversations kind of have a provocative feel to them. But Volume 5 just came out in Japan in December, and I have no idea how long this series is going to be. But this might be a good read if you're looking for something with a bit of a different art style and storytelling. Rainbow Days, I read volume 1. This is a shoujo series that follows 4 high school boys. They have an interesting friend group because they each have very different personalities and interests, but they get along really well. They each have girls they like, so we get to watch from the boys' perspective as each of them pursue different relationships. I really like the art style and character designs. I've read another series by this mangaka that is not licensed in English yet, so I'm really hoping Rainbow Days does well so that their other series might get some attention in English as well. This series also has an anime with a really great voice cast, so that's worth checking out as well. But the series is complete at 16 volumes in Japanese, so I'm looking forward to the next volumes as they're released. A Business Proposal. This is a 10-volume comedy romance manhwa series that follows a regular girl who attends a blind date, which is really more like an arranged marriage meeting for one of her friends who doesn't want to go. And it ends up being with the CEO of the company that she works for. And he's at the point where he's willing to marry anyone just so he can stop having to go to marriage meetings and focus on work. So the story follows their odd kind of back and forth romance. I found the story funny, but a lot of the drama and obstacles are pretty absurd and avoidable. Like the main girl when she's told, you have to do this thing or you'll be in trouble. And she's just like, oh, I guess I have no choice but to do it then. When it's like, you literally do have a choice. You could just say no and leave. So there are some slapstick comedy moments, some frustrating misunderstandings, but I really, really liked the ending of the story, like the last third of the series, a lot more than the beginning. The main couple is pretty fun, and most of the side characters are really likable too, but the second female lead, I really, really disliked, the main girl's best friend. She was so selfish and really like the worst friend through the entire story, but the art style is really good. All of the characters are gorgeous, especially the main guy, Temu, but all of the character designs are really good. The series is getting an English release later this year, and I wanted to read the series to decide if I wanted to pick up the physicals, but I don't really see myself rereading this series, but because I really like the art style and the ending, I might be tempted to just get the final couple volumes, but I don't know yet. We'll see. There are a few other manhwas I like a lot more than this one that I'd rather hold out and wait for a licensing announcement from, like Positively Yours and A Lady and Her Butler, but we'll see. Something's Wrong with Us. I read volume 12. This is a josei series that follows the dramatic romance between 2 wagashi makers. The 2 were childhood friends, with her mom working at his family's wagashi shop, and the story starts with her mother being accused of murdering his father, and then they don't see each other again until they re-encounter in their late 20s, both being super bitter and resentful toward each other. But the whole story is set in a wagashi shop and revolves around them making these traditional sweets. So I find that aspect really interesting. They're also dressed in kimono through most of the series as well. So it almost gives a historical vibe, but it is set in modern day. But volume 12 was another fantastic installment. Things did not go the way I was expecting them to, but while there are new twists in this volume, there are also some big developments. There are 4 more volumes to go still. The main story of the series ends at volume 16 with 3 additional volumes of side stories. I thought there were only 2 additional volumes, but The second and third are already available for pre-order in Japanese, volume 18 in mid-January and volume 19 mid-February. So I've been thoroughly enjoying all the drama and twists and turns along the way, and I can't wait for volume 13, which will be released pretty soon in February. A Side Character's Love Story. I read volumes 11 and 12. This is a seinen romance that follows two very shy and introverted college students who worked at a grocery store together. And I really love the two main characters. Our main girl is so timid and very self-conscious, and the main guy is super quiet, but acts more boldly when he needs to. The romance is very sweet, and honestly, the way they act is really relatable, probably for most introverts, how they act and react to things, and then how they analyze their actions afterwards. I also really like all the side characters in the series. They're really likable, the people they work with, their families, and their college friends. But in these two volumes, they're in their final year of college. I don't want to say any spoilers, but we get to see them as they're deciding what to do next. The series is ongoing with volume 15 coming out soon in Japanese in January. Not sure how long it's going to end up being, but it has a digital-only English license, and I'm really hoping that it will get an English print release because this is one I'd really like to have in my collection. Yakuza Fiance, Raisei wa Tanin ga ii. I read volume 1. This is a seinen drama series that follows two grandchildren of Yakuza group bosses. Their grandfathers want to marry them off to unify their groups. So Yoshino moves from Osaka to Tokyo to spend a year getting to know him, and the story is all about them getting to know each other and her trying to keep the upper hand so she doesn't get taken advantage of. But this series is ongoing with an upcoming Japanese release of volume 7. And I am current with this series as each new chapter is released, so I hope the English releases will not take too long to catch up to the Japanese releases. But I do really like this series. I like Yakuza and organized crime stories in general, but I find it really entertaining, and I'm super happy it got an English release. Run on Your New Legs. I read volume 3. This is a seinen sports series that follows a high school boy who is forced to stop playing soccer after he's in an accident and loses one of his legs. But he meets a prosthetic specialist who encourages him to take up running, and along the way he meets other athletes using prosthetics to continue competing in sports. So this volume continues to follow our main guy as he's getting used to using his blade for track, and the story gets into his relationship with his soccer friend from middle school, who has evidently been in a slump since the accident. But I find this series super interesting because I like sports series, and because I don't know a lot about prosthetics and parasports, I feel like I'm learning things with each new volume. But the series is completed in Japanese, so we have 2 more volumes to go. Tomo-chan is a girl. I read volumes 1 to 8. This is a seinen comedy romance series set in high school, and it follows a girl who has a crush on her childhood friend. But when they were little, he thought she was a boy because of her physical strength and outgoing tomboy personality. And now in high school, he still doesn't really treat her like a girl. I really love this series, as you can probably tell from my channel name. It's so funny, but also really sweet. And I wanted to reread it before its anime started airing this month. I have watched the first episode, and I'm super happy with the art style, the animation, the voice cast. And I highly recommend this one, both the manga and the anime. Kimi ni Todoke Special, Soulmate. I read volume 3. This is a short spin-off of the shoujo series Kimi ni Todoke. The story follows Kurumi and Sawako from Kimi ni Todoke in college. Another main character is Sawako's cousin Eiji, who is from the mangaka's other series, Crazy in Love. Volume 3 is the final installment of the series, and I definitely recommend this one if you like Kimi ni Todoke. Kazehaya appears for parts of the story. I would recommend reading Crazy in Love before starting Soulmate because several characters from Crazy in Love are brought back in Soulmate in volumes 2 and 3. And when you see them, you're supposed to already know their personalities and the history between each of the characters, so that's something to keep in mind. To be honest, I didn't love Crazy in Love, but I just viewed it as extra Kimi ni Todoke content. But I did enjoy Soulmate, and as expected, the art in it is just gorgeous and really dreamy. Tokyo Revengers. I read volumes 4 to 6, and I feel like everyone knows about this series. It's a shonen action sci-fi series that follows a group of middle school and high school aged boys who are members of gangs. So the series does depict violent fighting between 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. One of the characters has traveled back in time to prevent the tragic deaths of his ex-girlfriend and some other friends. This is a reread for me, and I'm really enjoying reading the physical volumes as the omnibus volumes are being released. The content in this most recent omnibus brought me to tears. I love these boys so much, so watching as they show such desperate emotions just really moves me every time I read these sections. But I'm really excited for season 2 of the anime that just started airing. And I'm excited to see which characters will get Nendoroid announcements next. The Ice Guy and His Cool Female Colleague. I read volumes 4 and 5. This is a comedy, romance, slice of life series with some supernatural elements. And it follows a salaryman, Himuro, who has a crush on one of his coworkers. It's super cute to see their interactions because Himuro is a descendant of people with cold abilities, so whenever he's feeling strong emotions, like when he's really happy or nervous or embarrassed, the environment changes around him. So everyone around him always knows how he's feeling. There are a handful of other coworkers that we met in earlier volumes that the story follows as well. But in these volumes, we continue to see Himuro trying to get his feelings across to the coworker he likes. The chapters definitely feel more episodic than in the previous volume, but we get to see some of their interactions outside of work, and we also get to meet Himuro's sister. But the story is really wholesome and sweet, and I definitely recommend it if you want a lighthearted romance between adult characters. And I mentioned last month, but this series did just have 2 Nendoroids announced for the 2 main characters, and the anime just started airing, so I hope everyone will check it out and enjoy it. I have watched the first episode, and it isn't sticking right to the manga, and the art style is a bit different, but I like the voice cast, and I'm going to enjoy watching how they adapt the story to anime. Wake Up Sleeping Beauty. I read volumes 1 to 6. This is a completed supernatural shoujo romance series that is from a high school boy's perspective. He's working really hard at his dad's cleaning company to help provide for his family's expenses because his mom is hospitalized. He starts doing housekeeping at a wealthy home and meets an unusual girl who is pretty much locked inside and seems to have multiple personalities, but we find out in volume 1 that she's actually being possessed by the spirits of different dead people. I'm not typically drawn to stories with supernatural elements, and I started this series not realizing it would have ghosts and possession, so I was gonna drop it after volume 1, but a friend who knows my tastes urged me to continue despite the occult stuff, saying I would like the ending, and I did. The ending was really moving. I really liked the characters, the art style, and I found the story pretty interesting. I probably wouldn't have even started the series if I knew it had occult stuff, and I probably won't read it again because even if the supernatural themes are more lighthearted than creepy, anything with the undead or spirits possessing people is not really for me. But surprisingly, this series is by the same mangaka as A Condition Called Love, which is a series I really like that is coming out this month, and it's completely different, but of course it has a similar art style. But if you like shoujo romance stories and you don't mind supernatural elements, this could be a good read for you. And the last series was probably the highlight of the month for me. Snow White with the Red Hair. I read volumes 1 to 26. So this is an adventure romance shoujo series. It's kind of historical, kind of fantasy, but it more so just has a kind of medieval feel to it. The story follows a young woman who is interested in herbs and medicine, and in the first volume, the prince of her kingdom wants to take her as a concubine, so she flees to the neighboring kingdom because she wants to have the freedom to pursue what she wants to do, and inadvertently stumbles upon the prince of that kingdom and becomes friends with him and the people around him. It's funny that every single volume has this basic blurb on the back cover and on the inside page, followed by a recap of recent events. But the story goes on to follow as they pursue the things that they're trying to accomplish. The character development is really good. There's romance, lots of little adventure arcs. And there are some more serious arcs with more action, but overall it's a really feel-good story. I watched the anime before reading, which covered, I believe, into volume 7. And there were a lot of details from the manga left out, so I'd recommend starting from volume 1 if you want to read this after watching the anime. There is one plot line in the second half of the series that spanned about a volume and a half that was just super disappointing for me. But after recovering from it, I'm pretending it didn't happen because other than that side plot, I've thoroughly enjoyed this read. and I'm really excited for the English releases past volume 22. But I did read through into volume 26 to catch up to the latest Japanese chapter releases, and the next arc is super good. So if anyone else got down about some of the recent events, there is more good story to come. I did read this as a 5-volume a week buddy read through December with a few friends on Instagram, and I really appreciated hearing everyone's thoughts on the characters and reactions to different events. I love the art style. All the characters are gorgeous, and the clothing and accessory designs are phenomenal. Zen and Obi are my favorite characters, and I absolutely adore Ryu. But if you've watched this series or are just curious about the manga, I definitely recommend giving it a try. These were all my reads from December, excluding the weekly and monthly new chapter releases from ongoing series that I'm following. It's already a week into January right now when I'm recording this, but I also wanted to share what my January TBR looks like. I have already finished my read of Haikyuu from where season 4 of the anime leaves off to the end of the series, so I'll share my thoughts on that in my January reading log. I'm planning to read Kaiju number 8, volumes 1 to 8. I'm going to be buddy reading Attack on Titan, volumes 1 to 15 in January, and then the rest in February. And Tsuiraku JK to Haijin Kyoshi, which is an age gap shoujo romance. So these are the main series I'm planning to read, but as usual, I'll probably find other little things to read in between. But if you want any more info about any of these series, definitely check them out on my anime list. And if you've read any of these series I mentioned, what did you think of them? Or do you maybe have them on your TBR? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But that's it for my December manga reading log and January preview, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks for watching.